The arrival of Yao Lao's group had undoubtedly caused the Falling Star Pavilion to become unusually lively. The disciples within the Falling Star Pavilion and even some elders were extremely curious about this pavilion chief that only existed in legend. The Falling Star Pavilion was basically developed by Feng Zunjia alone during these years. Even though this was the case, Feng Zunjia had also been leaving the spot of the pavilion chief empty. He did not have any intention of sitting on it. This was because he ultimately believed that Yao Lao would sooner or later return to the Falling Star Pavilion. This position was something that he had reserved for Yao Lao. This day had also ultimately arrived like he had anticipated. Hence, after settling the matter of Xiao Yan, he had gathered all the disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion the next day and announced the matter of returning the pavilion chief position. This kind of matter was undoubtedly extremely shocking to the Falling Star Pavilion. In the past, the Falling Star Pavilion had been treating Feng Zunjia as the leader. Currently, their true leader was going to change. The disciples below were naturally not very used to it. Fortunately, this unaccustomed manner did not last for very long before it was broken by another excitement. Even these fledgling younger generation did not feel unfamiliar with the name Yao Zunjia. Some of the older elders were even filled with wild joy within their hearts. They were extremely experienced and were clearly aware just what kind of position and reputation Yao Lao from back then had in the Central Plains. If one was to really discuss about his reputation and status, it was likely that even the three great heads from the Pill Tower would be slightly inferior. With such a person being the pavilion chief, why would the Falling Star be worried of not being strong? Yao Lao could only smile bitterly in the face of such a situation. However, he did not reject anything this time around. After having experienced the matters that had happened during these years, he also understood that unless one's strength was so great to the point that no one was able to resist one, there would ultimately be quite a big gap between a person and a faction. Back then, he was at a disadvantage in being too free and unfettered. Hence, he ended up being viciously attacked by the Hall of Soul after the latter found an opportunity. Since he possessed the chance to do everything again, he would naturally be unwilling to see this matter repeating itself. Additionally, Xiao Yan would definitely come to a true face-off with the Hall of Soul if he wished to rescue his father. At that time, Xiao Yan would require some faction supporting him from behind. This time around, Xiao Yan had risked death to rescue him. This had caused Yao Lao to place all of his thoughts on this disciple. Currently, he could be considered to be making some prior plans for Xiao Yan. Feng Zunjia sighed in relief within his heart when he saw that Yao Lao did not find any excuse to reject the post this time around. He had always thought that the Falling Star Pavilion belonged to Yao Lao in his heart. During these years, he was merely helping the latter manage it. Now that Yao Lao had returned, he would naturally need to return it back. The relationship between him and Yao Lao could be considered to be friends who had undergone life and death together. Feng Zunjia was able to search around bitterly for so many years because of Yao Lao. What did a mere pavilion chief position matter? Moreover, he was also extremely clear about Yao Lao's character. He did not specialize in management. At that time, he would still be the one to have a headache over these matters. After settling Xiao Yan down, Feng Zunjia and Yao Lao decided to shut the mountain door first because they were afraid of the revenge by the Hall of Soul that could interrupt Xiao Yan's recuperation. With the protection of the Great Falling Star Formation, it was likely that the Hall of Soul would not be able to extend its limbs over. Everything would be discussed after Xiao Yan wakes up. No one objected to the matter of shutting the mountain entrance. Although this realm could not be compared with the Pill Realm, its size was also quite large. There would not be much of a problem staying here for years. Moreover, the energy in this place was dense. The effect of one's training would be many times better than the outside world. Little Fairy Doctor's group naturally chose to remain behind with the mountain entrance shut. Xiao Yan had yet to awaken. How could she leave first? There was similarly no objections to Little Fairy Doctor's group remaining behind. The strength of these people could be considered top level even in the Central Plains. If they could remain in the Falling Star Pavilion, they would undoubtedly greatly strengthen the defense of this place. After the mountain entrance was shut, time also began to quietly flow by amidst this beautiful greenery. 2 months passed within the blink of an eye. Everything was extremely quiet during these 2 months. The expected Hall of Soul revenge did not occur. During this period of time, Feng Zunjia had also dispatched people to investigate. The Central Plains was still as lively as before. However, there was no news of any big activity from the Hall of Soul. Not even a little news of the branch hall being destroyed was released. Clearly, the Hall of Soul has locked the news. Yao Lao and Feng Zunjia were surprised at this situation. Given the character of the Hall of Soul, it was impossible for them to endure for so long without taking action. It seemed that there should be something restraining the limbs of the Hall of Soul, causing them to only be able to temporarily place this matter aside. However, the Hall of Soul, not seeking any trouble, also allowed Yao Lao and Feng Zunjia to sigh in relief. The current Falling Star Pavilion was no match for the Hall of Soul. If they were to begin a war now, the Falling Star Pavilion would end up suffering a serious blow. It would also not be impossible for the Falling Star Pavilion to be unable to recover from it. The Hall of Soul had given them an opportunity to recuperate. Naturally, Yao Lao and the rest did not waste the time. After having recovered some life force, he began to continuously find some of the methods to cause the strength of the Falling Star Pavilion to be strengthened. Time flowed by. Within the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Xiao Yan, who was within the stone tower, still did not show any trace of awakening. However, the originally pale and bloodless face of Xiao Yan had currently gradually become sleek red. His breathing also became normal. He was no longer like a person that was about to die like in the past. All of these indicated that the injuries within Xiao Yan's body was currently gradually recovering. His awakening was only a matter of time. During this 1 month, Little Fairy Doctor's group also took a position of elders within the Falling Star Pavilion after Feng Zunjia invited them with great effort. Although they were only guest elders, they were at the very least being pulled to the side of the Falling Star Pavilion. Little Fairy Doctor was non-committal towards Feng Zunjia's attempt to draw her oath. Yao Lao was Xiao Yan's teacher. Currently, the former was also the chief of the Falling Star Pavilion. In the future, Xiao Yan might also end up being the pavilion chief of this Falling Star Pavilion. In that case, it did not matter for her to become a nominal elder. Tianhua Zunjia also agreed to Feng Zunjia's invitation after hesitating for a period of time. In any case, there was currently nowhere for him to go. It was also good for him to find a place to settle down. Ziyin was playful in nature. Her agreement with Feng Zunjia was completely based on her whim. Moreover, with her joining, that Xiong Zhan could only nod his head with her coercing him. Feng Zunjia and the elders of the Falling Star Pavilion smiled happily in the face of this powerful group joining them. 3 To Dou Zun class experts joining them together. This weight was quite a great one. Just this alone would likely cause the Falling Star Pavilion to leap and truly become the top of the 4 pavilions. However, all of them forgotten that should Yao Lao completely recover his peak strength in the future, just his ability to gather people alone would likely cause the Falling Star Pavilion to become quite a strong faction within the entire Central Plains. There was no need to even discuss about the 4 pavilions. Time flowed like water. Spring passed and autumn arrived. A greenish-yellow color was added onto the lush green mountain forest. Half a year's time flowed by without one realizing it. However, Xiao Yan had still yet to wake. Although everyone could sense that the condition within his body was becoming increasingly good, he still did not show any signs of awakening. Even Yao Lao felt somewhat helpless in the face of this scene. The only one who could be relied on regarding this matter was Xiao Yan himself. During this period of time, the back mountain had been labeled as the forbidden ground of the Falling Star Pavilion. Other than Feng Zunjia's group, even the Falling Star Pavilion's elders were forbidden from entering. This situation naturally attracted the curiosity of all the Falling Star Pavilion disciples. However, after much inquiry, they were only aware that there was a young man called Xiao Yan in the stone tower, who recuperating while undertaking a retreat. Doqi Continent, Northwestern Region, Jiama Empire, Jiama Sacred City. Any citizen of the Jiama Empire were aware that the true ruler of this empire was no longer the Jiama imperial family. Instead, it was an alliance. This alliance was called the Yin Alliance. Yin, the Yin from Xiao Yan. Every person within the Jiama Empire were aware that the founder of this absolute overlord within the current Jiama Empire was a person called Xiao Yan. He had personally ended a Misty Cloud sect era within the Jiama Empire and began another Yin Alliance era. In the hearts of all the younger generation within the Jiama Empire, this name represented a kind of honor and hard work. This was because everyone were clearly aware that the person who had created this miracle was called a trash back then. There was a grand and towering large hall in the middle of the Jiama sacred city. The large hall was extremely tall. Its top overlooked the entire city. This place was currently the place with the greatest authority within the Jiama Empire. At this moment, the top of this heavily guarded large hall was a lady wearing a brilliant robe. She stood with her hands behind her. The figure of this lady was extremely bewitching. Even with the somewhat loose robe, it was still difficult to hide her demon-like curves that would cause one to be attracted. A faint moonlight scattered down from the sky, shining on her beautiful face that would cause one to involuntarily cease breathing. The first impression that this beautiful appearance gave one was a kind of demonic-like bewitching feeling. Her red lips were curled slightly. This arc enchanted everyone. However, there was a kind of pressure from a person of great authority between those narrow brows. An enchanting and majestic feeling coexisted. This caused that charm of hers to instantly reach the peak. At this moment, this lady, who possessed an bewitching appearance that could enchant everyone, was frowning slightly. She raised her head and looked at the bright moon. A skinny figure lingered continuously in her eyes. It has likely been 5 to 6 years. Xiao Yan, you have promised this queen that you will return. If you eat your words, I will tear your corpse into tens of thousands of pieces even if you die. The bewitching lady clenched her hands slightly. A complicated expression flashed over those pretty eyes that were filled with allure. Mother! An unusually tender voice that carried the tone of a baby suddenly sounded from behind this alluring lady while she was softly muttering to herself. The icy cold expression on the face of this bewitching lady immediately disappeared upon hearing this voice. A kind of beautiful smile that even Xiao Yan had never seen before surfaced. After which, she swiftly turned around and looked in the direction that the voice had arrived from. The place where the voice originated from was a flight of stone stairs. At this moment, there was a 2-year-old or so child on her bare little legs. The thing that caused one to feel surprise was that this little child was suspended half an inch from the ground without borrowing any support, standing in empty air. This was something that only an elite To Dou Zun could achieve. That jade carving-like face of the little girl made her appear like an exquisite porcelain doll. It caused only to like her so much to the point of being unable to let her go. A pair of dark black intelligent eyes appeared exceptionally sly under the moonlight. When the lady looked over, the clothes of the little child wiggled and a 7-colored small snake came out from under her clothes. After which, it laid on the white tender small arm of the child. It hissed and extended its snake's tongue. From this appearance of it, it was surprisingly exactly the same as the 7-colored heaven-swallowing python from back then. A black stone tower stood on the top of a mountain in a lonely manner. Wild grass grew on surroundings of the stone tower. These grass represented the change of time. The top of the stone tower was still that same scene that had not changed for a millennium. A young man sat on the stone platform with his eyes tightly shut. A kind of purple-brown flame lingered around his body. The flame burned fiercely, and it actually vaguely emitted a kind of great life force. Little fairy doctor's eyes were startled as she looked at the young man in the flame from the side of the stone platform. It was a long while later before she sighed in a quiet manner. "It has been a year. Have you not awoken?" Little fairy doctor softly muttered to herself. An entire year had passed ever since Xiao Yan was shifted over to this place back then. The falling star pavilion had suddenly strengthened rapidly during this 1 year. However, Xiao Yan, whom little fairy doctor was most concerned about, did not wake from his unconscious recuperating state. Initially, Yao Lao and the rest merely thought that it was because Xiao Yan's injuries was too serious. However, this kind of thinking was finally abandoned after Xiao Yan remained unconscious for over half a year. This was because they could sense that the injuries within Xiao Yan's body had currently completely recovered. The situation within his body was even better than his previous peak. Even Yao Lao was unable to understand why Xiao Yan continued to remain unconscious despite having been fully healed. Although their hearts were anxious in the face of such a situation, they were unable to do anything about it. Fortunately, none of them were reckless people. Hence, no one had the impulse of forcefully pulling Xiao Yan from his unconscious state. 1 year quietly flew by like the sand between one's fingers while everyone waited helplessly.
Ugh.
Little fairy doctor looked at the human figure, who had appeared to have turned into a stone, within the stone tower. An expression of grief flashed across her eyes. She gently shook her head and softly said, "Even if it is for Sun Er and the child in Kai Lin's womb, you must not continue to sleep like this." These words did not obtain any immediate effect. Little fairy doctor could only sigh in disappointment. She was just about to turn around when her lovely body suddenly stiffened. At that instant earlier, she had clearly saw Xiao Yan's finger shook a little. This kind of shaking might be extremely slight, but little fairy doctor would definitely not be mistaken, given her eyesight. Quite a number of Falling Star Pavilion's disciples were currently gathered at a training ground near the back mountain for their daily training. A green figure was standing with her hands behind her back at the middle. Her face was somewhat stern and beautiful. The current Mu Qingwan had some awe to her when compared to the past. Mu Qingwan's pretty eyes took one look around. She only nodded slightly when she saw that no one was not putting in effort. Immediately, her eyes turned towards the back mountain. She was clearly able to see the black stone tower there. Mu Qingwan was a little absent-minded as her eyes looked at the stone tower. 1 year ago, Xiao Yan had exchanged blows with a 5-star To Dou Zun and had broken an arm of the other party. This battle result still caused her to feel some shock even when she recalled about it now. However, the price of such a shocking battle result was also quite great. It had even reached a height that an ordinary person was unable to accept. The back mountain had already been shut for a year. "Big Senior, do you know when it will open again?" Mu Qingwan recovered when she heard the soft voice that appeared behind her. She turned her head around and took a look. It was actually a couple of young disciples who possessed quite a great reputation within the Falling Star Pavilion. She smiled immediately, shook her head and replied, "It is likely that even teacher is unaware of this matter. I heard that a senior called Xiao Yan is training in the stone tower. It is rumored that he is the direct disciple of the pavilion chief," a female disciple asked in a somewhat curious soft voice. "However, this training period is a little too long. It has been a year, but we have never heard even the slightest activity within the stone tower. Could it be?" A person spoke hesitatingly. "All right, let's not discuss about such matters." Mu Qingwan knitted her brows slightly and said. Everyone hurriedly ceased their discussions after seeing Mu Qingwan frowning. It appeared that the latter possessed quite a high prestige and authority within this Falling Star Pavilion. Recently, quite a number of elders has left because of some matters. All of you should not take this opportunity to be lazy. If you fail to pass the year-end test, you will suffer for it, Mu Qingwan reprimanded. He, big senior sister, you can be rest assured. Additionally, I recently heard that there seems to be some ancient remains appearing in the 10,000 Great Mountains at the southern region's borders of the Central Plains. Could it be that the elders has left because of this matter? A young man, who appeared quite intelligent, curiously inquired. It is a little related. This ancient remains is not an ordinary one. Those factions with some ability in the Central Plains intend to encroach onto it. However, the 10,000 Great Mountains is within the Beast region. That is the territory of the magical beast tribes. Those old shrewd fellows will definitely be unhappy to share this ancient remains with others. Therefore, quite a number of battles will occur when the time comes. Mu Qingwan spoke without hiding anything since they were all core disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion. Ancient remains. It is rumored that a Tian-class Do skill has even surfaced. Whoever could obtain it. Tian-class? I have never seen a Do skill of this level in all my life. Don't daydream. Such a treasure will be a hot potato in the hands of anyone. If one does not possess some ability, one will not only be unable to keep the treasure but will end up attracting trouble. Mu Qingwan rolled her eyes and said. Everyone laughed when they heard these words of Mu Qingwan. After chatting idly for a while, all of them were preparing to sit down and train when the entire mountain suddenly trembled. The footsteps of quite a number of people staggered a little, and they nearly fell. Why? What had happened? This sudden trembling immediately stirred quite a great commotion. All the Falling Star Pavilion's disciples, who were training, hurriedly got up. In an instant, the great chaos and private conversations continued to spread. Mu Qingwan was also shocked for a moment because of this unexpected change. She immediately cried in a deep voice, "All of you be quiet. There is the pavilion chief and the various elders guarding this place. What can happen?" The chaos finally gradually calmed down after hearing Mu Qingwan's cry. Everyone faced each other and felt that those words were logical. Currently, the Falling Star Pavilion had many experts. Even if this mountain was about to collapse, they would be able to directly reconnect it. Bang! While everyone gradually calmed down, the mountain top suddenly shook again. This time around, everyone, who had calmed down, immediately discovered the source of the ripple. Hence, numerous gazes were suddenly turned towards the stone tower at the back mountain. It is a ripple that was emitted from that place. Mu Qingwan looked at the stone tower at the back mountain. Her heart involuntarily leaped. This was the first activity that the stone tower had emitted during this 1 year. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The trembling also attracted the attention of the many experts within the Falling Star Pavilion. Immediately, numerous figures rushed out from various spots. Finally, they were suspended in the midair. Their eyes were shocked and uncertain as they looked towards the back mountain. They could vaguely sense an extremely terrifying aura. It was just like that of a huge, slumbering dragon slowly awakening. Chi. 2 elderly figures also swiftly surfaced in the midair. Their eyes looked at the commotion of the stone tower on the back mountain. Immediately, a wild joy that could not be hidden flashed across their eyes after they sensed the frightening aura. This aura, it's Xiao Yan. This fellow has finally awakened, huh? While the entire Falling Star Pavilion had turned into an uproar because of the activity, an unusual change also gradually appeared within the stone tower. Little Fairy Doctor's eyes were filled with joy and surprise as she looked at the stone platform in front of her from within the stone tower. At this moment, a vast and mighty star strength was continuously seeping out from Xiao Yan's body, which was on the stone platform, in a torrent-like manner. She could sense a familiar aura slowly awakening while these star strength spread. Is he finally going to wake up? An excited and joyful expression surfaced on Little Fairy Doctor's face when she sensed this activity. It had been a year. Finally, there was some activity. While Little Fairy Doctor was filled with a wild joy, the purple-brown flame that covered Xiao Yan's body suddenly swelled at this moment. It spread over the entire stone tower. Seeing this scene, Little Fairy Doctor hesitated for a moment before she moved and rushed out from the stone tower. The strength of the 3,000 Lotus Heart Flame was extremely strong. Even she was unable to endure for too long. While Little Fairy Doctor was withdrawing from the stone tower, the purple-brown flame that permeated the stone tower suddenly erupted like a volcano. It burst out from the top of the tower, after which they agglomerated from all directions. Finally, they formed a 1,000 feet large purple-brown dragon. The large dragon meandered and forcefully occupied the place. Its enormous body covered the entire stone tower. A rich dragon's might spread, causing the legs of quite a number of people to weaken. Roar! The enormous dragon was formed. It suddenly roared towards the sky. The sound of the dragon roar spread in a vast and mighty manner. Immediately, everyone saw that the sky became distorted. A starlight pillar that was nearly 1,000 feet large gathered from the night sky in the outside world, after which it penetrated through the spatial barrier and heavily landed on the body of the meandering large dragon. This vast and mighty star strength completely landed on the body of the enormous dragon. It caused the latter's large body to suddenly emit a wave of bright, intense light. Soon after, a vast and mighty aura spread out like floodwaters. Light shot in all directions, causing the eyes of quite a number of people to be shut. A moment later, they finally opened their eyes, after which they saw a skinny figure slowly appearing at the head of the meandering large dragon. A vast and mighty aura seeped out from within the body of this person. This aura, it's Dou Zun. Mu Qingluan's expression instantly became stunned as she sensed the strength of this vast and mighty aura. A moment later, she inhaled a deep breath of air. Her voice trembled a little as she muttered. The enormous dragon lingered over the sky. Its vast and mighty dragon might spread over this entire place. Under this intense dragon pressure, even the expressions of some falling star pavilion elders changed slightly. The figures that were suspended in the sky could not help but descend significantly. Is this the senior training within the stone tower? What terrifying strength! This kind of aura. None of the elders within the pavilion could compare with him. This aura should have reached the Dou Zun class. Hiss, how unbelievable. This senior is around the same age as us. Yet, he has unexpectedly reached this stage. Waves after waves of private conversations sounded on the mountain after sensing the vast and mighty aura that permeated over the sky. One could still hear a shocked note in these voices. Clearly, it was the first time that they had met such a young elite Dou Zun. These people were in possession of quite a great talent in order to become the disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion. Their bones possessed some pride. However, such pride appeared to be worthless in front of this senior named Xiao Yan. This fellow, he's really a little too frightening. He had actually directly broke through to the Dou Zun class. The shock on Mu Qingwan's face continued for a moment before she gradually recovered her calmness. A bitter laughter was emitted. Her heart was also quite complicated. When she had first met Xiao Yan, the latter's level was a little lower than hers. However, within a short 2 to 3 years, the latter adopted a terrifying soaring pace and directly advanced to the Dou Zun class. This caused her to feel some doubt about her training talent for the first time. How could she be considered a genius in the face of such an abnormal existence? It is indeed Xiao Yan. Feng Zunjia and Yao Lao stood in the empty air in the sky. Their eyes were fiery hot as they looked at the human figure on the head of the enormous dragon. The former involuntarily cried out joyfully as he did so. Yao Lao smiled and nodded. An excitement also flashed through his eyes. 1 year. This little fellow had finally awakened. Moreover, it seemed that his awakening this time around had brought him quite a great benefit. Cuckoo, little fellow is indeed quite blessed. Not only has he truly activated the medicinal strength of the Yin mysterious dragon pill, but he had even taken the opportunity to break through to the Dou Zun class. If I guess correctly, he should have accumulated energy during this year and prepared to break through in one attempt. Feng Zunjia laughed. Yes, the amount of energy needed to break through to the Dou Zun class is too great. If it is not because he had the help of the space meteorite, it is likely that this fellow's breakthrough will be delayed by at least 2 years. Yao Lao smiled. His face contained a pleased expression. Xiao Yan was usually good at grasping opportunities. Currently, he did not give up this great opportunity, choosing to be silent for a year to do so. Finally, at this very moment, he had completely erupted in a shocking manner. While everyone were sighing in surprise within their hearts, the meandering large dragon in the sky continued to remain for over 10 minutes before gradually disappearing. With the scattering of the large dragon, the dragon's might that permeated the place also swiftly weakened. With the complete disappearance of the enormous dragon, that figure in the sky also gradually became clear. At the end, it finally completely appeared in front of everyone's sight. The young human figure in the sky stretched his lazy waist. The skin on his body immediately wiggled at this moment. Those bones in his body emitted numerous bone cracking and rubbing sound, which appeared just like the starting of a complicated mechanical equipment. While Xiao Yan sensed the comfortable feeling that spread within his body, a breath of somewhat hot air followed his throat before being spat out from his mouth. Is this the strength of an elite Dou Zun? Xiao Yan clenched his hand slightly. He sensed the vast ocean like Dou Qi within his body and involuntarily became absent-minded. This kind of strength possessed an allure that could cause one to become crazy. Countless number of people had spent all their life trying to obtain such strength. Xiao Yan stretched his hand before suddenly clenching it. The space in front of him was actually suddenly distorted into a strange depression. If this clenching occurred on a person's body, even an expert Dou Zung's body would end up crumbling into a pile of blood and flesh. A smile slowly surfaced on Xiao Yan's face as he sensed this vast and mighty strength that could distort space by just raising one's hand. This stage was so distant and unreachable when he looked at it back then. Now, however, he had truly reached it. If the current Xiao Yan was to meet old ghost Zhai Xing again, he might not dare to say that he could kill the latter without unleashing the Annihilation Lotus Flame, but with his strength, that old ghost Zhai Xing would not be able to do anything to him. This was the gap between a To Dou Zun and a To Dou Zun. When Xiao Yan was at the 9-star To Dou Zun, he only had the choice to flee when meeting an expert like old ghost Zhai Xing. Even if he unleashed the Annihilation Lotus Flame, he would at the very most be able to fight until the both of them were seriously injured. However, once he broke through the To Dou Zun class and entered the level of a To Dou Zun, everything would undergo a drastic change. The current Xiao Yan might not be able to defeat old ghost Zhai Xing in an ordinary battle. Similarly, however, he would no longer need much effort to escape from the hands of old ghost Zhai Xing. Old ghost Zhai Xing. This debt, there will be a time when you have to repay. Xiao Yan's dark black eyes, which had been quiet for a long time, had a faint chillness flashing over it. He must not easily let this old ghost off, even if he ended up benefiting from this disaster of being seriously injured. Chi. A rushing wind sound was swiftly transmitted over while a desire to kill surged within Xiao Yan's heart. Immediately, a couple of figures flashed and appeared beside Xiao Yan. You are finally willing to wake up? Feng Zunjia patted heavily on Xiao Yan's shoulders. During this 1 year's time, they had been miserably tortured because of Xiao Yan. Haha, thank you, old Feng. Xiao Yan smiled and respectfully cupped his hands together towards Feng Zunjia. You should thank your teacher. He has likely not have many good sleeps during this 1 year. Feng Zunjia waved his hand and said. Xiao Yan's eyes turned towards the smiling Yao Lao by the side when he heard this. He looked at the familiar smile that he had not seen for many years, and something surged in his heart. For an instant, he was actually unaware of just what he ought to say. Don't listen to this fellow's nonsense. It's good that you have awakened. It's good that you have awakened. Even with Yao Lao's calmness, his heart involuntarily became emotional as he spoke when he watched the face that appeared much more matured compared to back then. Xiao Yan's eyes were a little red as he looked at the laughing Yao Lao. All of his ability were taught by Yao Lao with great effort. If it was not because of Yao Lao, Xiao Yan at the very most become just an expert within the Jiama Empire, even if his training talent did not disappear. This continent had never lacked any geniuses. It did not matter if he was included or not. It was because of the experience in his youth that had honed Xiao Yan's character. Hence, Yao Lao was an important part that could not be missing for him to be able to possess his achievements today. However, despite Yao Lao putting in a great amount of effort to groom him, he could only merely watch Yao Lao being captured by the Hall of Soul back then without being able to do anything. This kind of helpless feeling was the most torturing form of torture. All right, little fellow, there is no need to think about the matters of the past. The speed of your growth has exceeded my expectations. Looks like the Hall of Soul's act of capturing me had ended up helping you. Yao Lao softly patted Xiao Yan and laughed. Xiao Yan also smiled when he heard this. Although these words were somewhat of a joke, there was indeed some truth to it. Ever since Yao Lao was captured by the Hall of Soul, the motivation for Xiao Yan to train had become incomparably strong. It was also because of this kind of training motivation that enabled Xiao Yan's strength to soar within a short couple of years. Teacher, I have currently already swallowed 3 types of heavenly flames and already possessed sufficient ability to help you refine a body. Xiao Yan swiftly settled down the emotions within his heart. He glanced at Yao Lao's somewhat illusory body before speaking anxiously. Yao Lao's heart was filled with a warm and pleased feeling when he saw the anxious desire on Xiao Yan's face. The heavens had caused him to be blind once. Fortunately, she did not allow him to be blind a second time. The matter of refining a body is not urgent. Although Yao Chen's life was not in danger when he fell into the hands of the Hall of Soul this time around, he had lost quite a lot of essence spiritual qi. Before refining a body, we must first replenish the lost essence spiritual qi. Otherwise, even if he obtained a physical body, his strength will not advance. Feng Zunjia by the side shook his head and said upon hearing this, Essence spiritual qi? Xiao Yan was startled. There is another term for the essence spiritual qi. It is also called essence spiritual strength. The Hall of Soul had captured those spirits because they wished to remove these essence spiritual qi from their bodies. This kind of spiritual qi is the life of a soul. Once the spiritual qi is lost, it would end up causing a great harm to the soul. Feng Zunzhou explained. Xiao Yan's expression immediately sunk upon hearing this. He recalled those chains that lingered over all the souls. This thing was actually used to absorb the spiritual qi. How can we replenish the spiritual qi? Xiao Yan asked. Currently, everything was already prepared. He must fulfill Yao Lao's only wish at all cost. The spiritual qi is the foundation of a soul. It is extremely difficult to be altered by external force. Feng Zunzhou mused for a moment and replied. However, there are two unique things in this world that possess the mysterious effect of repairing spiritual qi. Which two? Xiao Yan swiftly inquired. The soul baby fruit and the spiritual dragon heavenly fungus. Feng Zunzhou slowly replied. As long as we can obtain one of these two, we will be able to replenish the spiritual qi that Yao Chen had lost. Unfortunately, the rarity of these two types of mysterious items are superior in every way when compared to the heavenly flames. I have only read about them on some ancient books. During this 1 year that you have been unconscious, I have already dispatched the experts from the Falling Star Pavilion to search for information on these two types of mysterious things. However, Feng Zunzhou shook his head and sighed softly when he spoke until this point. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily sunk upon hearing this. It was unexpected that some unexpected incident had occurred now that they were already fully prepared. This damn Hall of Soul. Xiao Yan gritted his teeth. If Yao Lao was unable to replenish the spiritual qi, would that not mean that he will always be unable to possess a body? Is there really no other solutions? Xiao Yan spoke somewhat unwillingly. Feng Zunzhou was silent. Xiao Yan's fist was involuntarily clenched tightly when he saw this matter of Feng Zunzhou. While the few of them were quiet, an elder at the side hesitated for a moment before suddenly speaking softly. Pavilion Chi Feng, the soul baby fruit, one of the two mysterious items that you have mentioned. It is rumored that it is in the ancient remains that had caused an uproar recently.